Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eric Conrad, and yes, fresh back from Orlando. I made the mad dash. Got home Friday night miraculously. Currently broadcasting from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm looking at the Citadel right there, actually. Drove up from Portland, Maine to Halifax, 8.5 hour drive on Saturday. Easter brunch with my son and his girlfriend. Meet the parents, no pressure, but I think we pulled it off. Anyways, I'm here. I'm speaking at the Atlantic Security Conference on Friday about container security. And I actually don't have any PowerPoint slides for you. I figured you probably had enough PowerPoint slides in your lifetime. If you've gone to SANS, you certainly have. So I'm just going to do it heavy demo based, right? And I put every link here, all of it. Oh, by the way, I'm keeping it low tech, but well, I'm avoiding PowerPoint. So I'm going low tech on my intro here. That's me, Eric Conrad, econrad@gmail.com, etc. And this talk is about Security 511, or really a lab at a Security Lab 511 that I've deconstructed and decided to go demo based. You just talked about Seth, co-author 511. And he talked about supply chain AI aspects, and now I'm going for direct detection. And talk is detecting command and control frameworks for your Sysmon and Windows event logging. Now, if you go to ericconrad.com right here, I've gone ahead. It's on GitHub. You can look at this, all the commands, everything else, and the links I'll mention, at least most of them. Now, I may, off the top of my head, mention some other links, but the links I'll mention as I kind of roll along right there, right? And so I've looked at this for a while now, and I want to look at the rise of C2 frameworks. So this is Team Kumari, and this is the last time. It's been a little while since they've updated it. This is the last time they've actually shown the most dominant C2 frameworks. Now, C2 framework, of course, command and control framework. Cobalt Strike, which John mentioned, many of the speakers today mentioned, is the dominant C2 framework. And really, it's what's a C2 framework? That's the current name for really, well, penetration testing software. I think Cobalt Strike calls it adversary simulation. It's not simulation; it's real. So maybe they keep the lawyers at bay when they call it adversary simulation, right? And this list, Cobalt Strike's usually number one, Metasploit's usually number three, and the rest kind of bubble around. They float up, they float down, they float up, they float down. Sliver was number two for a while, and it slid down. And what happens with these C2 frameworks is they become a victim of their own success. Sliver was the hotness. Sliver was way down here when I started using it. And everyone's like, hey, use Sliver. Sliver's great. No one's detecting it. And it becomes a victim of its own success. The more of us that use it, it keeps going up. And then all the EDR vendors, Windows Defender Antivirus, gets really good at detecting Sliver, and it kind of falls down again, right? And Cobalt Strike remains in the top spot, has been for quite a while, but many people are surprised to see Metasploit number three. Metasploit's been around a long time. And often when I give a talk and I mention Metasploit, because I actually use Metasploit to pull off what I'm about to pull off. And what I'm about to pull off, show you in log form, is bypassing Windows Defender Antivirus, going after a fully patched Windows 10 box, Windows Defender Antivirus running, and get in and steal tokens, become domain admin. And that was a challenge I put to myself when we did a 511 update fairly recently. Could I do all that? Because I don't want to, game it so that we disable antivirus and come in with no AV. That's not a very good lab because it's not realistic. I wanted it to be realistic, real deal, actual, And I pulled all that off, and I really wanted to use Sliver for that. I could not get past Windows Defender Antivirus with Sliver. I simply could not. I tried for a long time. And with Metasploit, it took me about 5 minutes. Now, the thing about Metasploit is don't use default settings. Don't use default settings. Don't use default settings. But sometimes I make these talks, some of these InfoSec, too cool for school types, like, oh, Metasploit, very 2010 of you, Conrad. Well, I tried a bunch of those frameworks. I really wanted to use Sliver because I've been using Sliver a lot in my day-to-day job. But I finally gave up, and 5 minutes later, boom, right? So we start with a password spray. We're going to show you this. I've kind of deconstructed a bunch of slides and a lab. And by the way, here's the actual lab in 511. This is the electronic workbook. And, if you've taken a SANS class with electronic workbook, copy paste functionality, all that, you hit that, copy, et cetera, et cetera. So in the class, there's a lecture on the scenario showing you, and then what the attacker did, what the defender did, and then the lab is, okay, let's see what the defender did to detect all that, right? So, you know, avoiding the boring stuff, tried a whole bunch of exploitation, fully patched, remote code execution on Windows 10, fully patched. It's not going to work. Borrowing some third-party software that's insecure. Decided to go with an old school password spray. Password spraying, of course, is one password, many users. And Seth referenced our Battlestar Galactica theme in 5.11. You're seeing it right here. Number 6. He was talking about number 1 in his talk. Number 6 here, one of the human-looking Cylons. Gata, which is the one that got hit. Gata was actually the administrator, the network administrator of the computer network on Galactica, right? Gets in with Winter with the 2023 bang. Very common, quote, complex password, ha ha ha, right? So, number 6 now has a password for some user. And what is that user, right? And on the defender side, and I went ahead and ran a few of these commands. I'm going to run most of these commands live, but I ran a few of them in advance just to save you some time. And show you this over here. Yeah. So all I'm doing here is it's going to be PowerShell heavy talk. That's failed logons right there. 18,311 failed logons. Those are successful logons. Those are failed logons. And showing you some of the power of PowerShell on a simple one-liner, just summarizing that kind of data. Now, both successful and failed logons are not logged by default by Windows. The ability to log them is built-in functionality, but they're not actually logged, right? And so as a result, most people don't see this. Now, obviously, if you have something internet-facing, you could fail logins all day long, but hopefully your internet-facing stuff is dual-factor authentication. Hopefully, you're not allowing access to anything remotely single-factor, meaning username and password. And I know, some companies still have that. You really shouldn't have that. Zero Trust says dual-factor everywhere. As a starting point, I say dual-factor all remote, dual-factor all sensitive, dual-factor all admin access, whether internal or not, and then work towards all dual factor. But to begin with, okay, as we're working towards zero trust, all remote access dual factor, yes, including email, because bots will grind on that all day long, and all sensitive access, including obviously administrative access inside or out, and then work towards the rest. And when I tell my clients, hey, log both successful and failed logins, I hear the same thing every single time. Eric, we'll get buried in logs. We'll get buried in logs. Well, if something on the inside, this is on the inside, is failing to log on 18,000 times, you really, really need to know. And people fat finger things all the time. Well, use what's called a clipping level. A clipping level says, let's say on an average day, you get 100 failed logons a day, or an average hour, you get 20. Let's just say average hour 20. Okay, over 100 failed logons in an hour alert. That's called a clipping level. Fine, we'll ignore 20. We'll ignore 30. Over 50, over 100, tuned to taste, etc. Right? So there's that. And count the failed logons. Then I did this intentionally, I being number 6 in the scenario we lay out in 5.11. I knew PSExec was unlikely to work. PSExec was the hotness. For C2 frameworks back 3, 4, 5 years ago, PSExec was the hotness. Everyone used PSExec because I want to get remote code execution. I have credentials. I want to use them across the network, right? And so I expected this to fail with Windows Defender Antivirus, and sure enough, bang, access denied. But I created forensically a whole bunch of alerts. It actually, the command ran, service was created, and then Defender stood in and went bang, right? Killed it. And on the other side here, on the Defender side, I'm going to run a bunch of these commands live now. Oops, sorry, I didn't clear my last command. There you go there. You see a lot of this kind of stuff. Obfuscated code, right? That's a service creation event, right? Look at that service name, randomly generated, right? We see a lot of that. If you Google double quote 0 hits because it's randomly generated on the fly. And this is called obfuscated code. It's building up these commands while kind of obfuscating and separating little pieces of it, building up kind of like here it's saying logging, but it's doing it in an obfuscated way. It's building up the string logging, right? And normal service creation event might be 4 lines, 5 lines, 6 lines. And now this is very, very long, right? This stands up like a sore thumb if you see it. Also, heavy use of syswile64, that's Windows on Windows 64, or 32-bit emulation on 64-bit software. You get the idea, a lot of that. And base 64 encoded, etc. right? And I already ran this one in advance because it's going to take a while to search everything. Yeah. This is process creation. Now, process creation, 4688, you don't normally get the command line when you do that. You have this process in a Windows environment, but this is not populated unless you make a registry change. I recommend you enable process creation events, will enable the command line of them, and or install Sysmon and get Sysmon event 1, which gave the same thing. This is the same stuff we saw in the service creation event. Just a lot of obfuscation. Once you see it, you see it. You can't miss it. It's a quote I love to quote. If you've heard talks of mine before, you've heard this quote: "Sunlight is the best disinfectant." William Brandeis said that years ago. He wasn't talking about obfuscated code, obviously, or malware, C2 frameworks, clearly, but he was talking about some government transparency thing, but it applies here. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Going back to failed logons, you'd never see it unless you're logging them. Otherwise, it's invisible, and that's darkness. Malware festers in the darkness, right? And then a defender stands in and says, steps in and says, "Not on my watch." And yes, what's nice about the defender logs? Nice about the defender logs is I can search them with the same get when event tools that I've been using here, right? And suspicious behavior, you bet it was. You bet it was. And it jumped in PS attack. Yep. Yep, there you go right there. PS exec, PS attack, Trojan PowerShell, PS exec, PowerShell no op. You see that kind of stuff a lot. PowerShell no profile, meaning don't tie it to a user's profile. Hidden means hidden window. Obfuscated code. Defender stands in and kills it. And by the way, Windows Defender Antivirus, even the free home one, is fantastic. It's really, really good. It's one of the best out there. For if you have friends, loved ones, neighbors, whatever, who are buying some Symantec, or, I'm not picking on Symantec, but if someone's paying, just the first one that came to mind, or McAfee, whoever, Kaspersky, if they're paying for antivirus as a home user, stop. Use Windows Defender. It's really good. And so then I switched over to WMI exec, which is the new hotness. So what PS exec used to be for C2 frameworks or pen testers like myself 3 years ago, now we've shifted over to WMI exec. It uses Windows management instrumentation, and it's very, very stealthy. And I wasn't really expecting this to work. I've got credentials. Let's use WMI. Boom, extremely stealthy. Except it does a lot of this kind of stuff. And watch this. Once you have that sunlight, it's impossible to miss it. You see a lot of this redirect. You saw a whole bunch of events go by. Why? Because I searched for that. I searched for admin $. Now, certainly, processes accessing admin $, in a Windows environment is common. But CMD redirected to admin $. When you see WMI exec, it gives you a C prompt. It's part of IM packet. I'll link to it at ericconrad.com. It feels like I'm logged in locally. It gives me a C prompt. I'm typing CD, I'm typing dir, all that stuff. It's not actually logged in locally. It's setting those commands across the network via WMIC and getting the output back via the admin $ share. So if someone's using tools like this and they run 100 commands, there'll be at least 100 redirects via admin $ share. But once again, Sunlight is the best disinfectant. You have to have that command line. Default Windows logging, you don't have that. It's invisible, completely invisible. And attackers know this. Nation states know this. Everyone knows this. Pen testers know this. Have you turned on command line auditing 4688 with some changes, GPO changes, et cetera, or Sysmon? Most companies don't do that. Bang, right? So now I'm in. I'm like, okay. I run who am I dash all, right? Who types the command, who am I, other than attackers? Very few people. I don't log in the morning and say, who am I right now? Oh, Conrad. Oh, cool. That's cool. Good for me, right? And so looking for who am I now, and you see who am I dash all, and you're going to enumerate now. There it is there. Who am I dash all, right? And they see that their Gata is a local administrator. Now they do the happy dance. Number 6 dances around. I want to be domain admin. Right now I'm local admin. So now, without Windows Defender, this is going to be straightforward. Metasploit run get system, then load the incognito extension, which allows us to see security access tokens. I can then steal a token, impersonate it, and delegate it. I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold that thought, right? And so we saw the who am I command. Then I decided to create a custom executable with MSF Venom, right? Now, the first time I did this, I didn't use any form of polymorphic encoding by design. I wanted to, for building these commands up, this lab up, I wanted to show both success and failure. if I just show pure success, because a lot of the stuff as a pen tester, I'm going to fail at a few things that eventually get through. And I'm going to rely on the organization's lack of logging or lack of good functioning. I mean, maybe it's logged, it goes into what we call compliance SIM, meaning there's a million events per day or more, and it's just lost in the noise of all that. So I'm relying on a lack of logging or a poorly tuned SIM or an undertrained SOC staff where it's just lost in the millions, right? I figured this wouldn't work. I did throw one curveball, which is a fascinating curveball forensically. It turns out Metasploit needs a template to build an EXE off of, and MSF Venom is part of Metasploit. I decided the default template always gets caught, always gets caught. It used to be called template.exe. I'm not sure if they changed or not. But if you just use a default template, all the AV vendors catch it because they look for the default template. I use Notepad. I'm going to actually stop using Notepad because I think it's becoming too successful a technique because it's so very useful, right? And it turns out WMI exec has a handy dandy output command, upload it, it uploads, run it, Defender steps in and kills it, which I expected. In the old days, simply using a different template would have done it. Nowadays, everyone's up their game. No. Okay. So what does that look like? I can look for some stuff like plan. I'll jump over there. I'll come back. Let this run for a bit here. Let that go. Command executed here. Here we see access to references to plan. Oh, here's the exe was created. So one of the nice things about Sysmon, you can do creation of exes or creation of anything really. In this case, I created a rule name. Well, it has a new exe been created. Sysmon, if you haven't checked it out recently, it's linked on ericconrad.com. It's got amazing stuff. Sysmon can now block. It has the ability to block things. A lot of people missed that more recently. It turns out Russia and Ukraine was doing shredding. They were dropping executables, shredding. Of course, you know what shredding means. Overwrite, then delete. And Sysmon can now block file shredding. Sysmon can now block creation of exes specific to a directory, right? I'm not blocking it here, but I'm logging it here, right? Cool. So that's a creation of that's the exe. That's a creation of the exe. Command then executed. I'll show you that, and I'll grab the next command, and then come back. Command then executed, and then Windows Defender killed that one too. So here's the command executing. Again, lots and lots of redirects. The admin $sign here, which is how WMI exec, and many other WMI-based tools work, right? Then we do that. Windows Defender stomps on it. Meterpreter, you get an A+ for detection there. Windows Defender Antivirus. All right. Close these out to save a little bit of shuffling. Cool. And then I decided to re-encode and throw in this form of polymorphic encoding. Now, the number one most successful form of polymorphic encoding for Metasploit has always been shikata ga nai. That's a Japanese phrase for nothing can be done. But shikata ga nai is very, very popular. And I try to avoid the really popular things. Because if everyone's doing this cool thing, just like Sliver became too successful, I decided to use XOR. I used 10 rounds of XOR encoding. I kept the same Notepad template file, 10 rounds of XOR encoding, and I uploaded it. I ran it, and it worked. I was not expecting it. The whole thing, once I switched to WMI exec, it took me about 5 minutes. And I'm like, wow. I thought it was going to be harder. Right? But so I'm in. Hacker voice, I'm in, right? But Defender's still watching me. Defender's still like hovering, like, just there, looming over my shoulder, ready to just pounce, right? And I felt that pressure of Defender always being behind me because I want to steal tokens, I want to run get system, I want, all this stuff, right? Defender's like waiting just to leap, right? So I'm in, okay. And we had a lot of the same events we had before, but now Sysmon gives me the actual network connection out. You see here port 8080, right? You see there port 8080. Now, a lot of network connections, but still forensically, we're building the picture. I do more incident handling than forensics, but certainly you want to build a picture blow by blow of what happened. There's a C2 going out. All right. Hence the term C2 framework, right? We ran get system and Defender was like, but did not kill my connection. I'm still in. Get system, bang, steps on me, right? I'm like, but I'm still in. I'm like, back off, man, So I'm like, you know what? And I wasn't sure what to do in the moment, the heat of the moment. I'm like, you know what? I'm admin. RDP wasn't turned on. I'll just turn on RDP, log in, and click that button. I just click that the defender button. I'll just hit that button, right? So I did all that, logged in, and I tried. I'm not going to bore you with all the sort of details of my failure here. I tried for a long time to kill Defender from the command line. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I couldn't figure it out in a reasonable amount of time, right? I'm like, okay, I'll just, I'll just go in. That's get system being killed right there. Doesn't like that at all. Not having that. Not on Defender's watch. Oh, sorry, copy paste fail there. You get the idea. You see a lot of this kind of stuff, but again, you need the command line. I know I'm beating a drum here. Meterpreter always creates these 6 character pipes randomly generated every single time. Another tool I didn't link to it on ericconrad.com yet. I will when I'm done here. Deep Blue CLI. Deep Blue CLI would have caught that, right? Tool I wrote for DerbyCon years ago. Two DerbyCon talks. Deep Blue CLI would spot that, and a lot of this mayhem for that matter, right? Not a Deep Blue CLI talk, but FYI, Deep Blue CLI, right? And then I turned on RDP, a very loud event forensically. Again, sunlight is the best disinfectant. If you're watching, you'll see it. Now, you may use RDP, you may not in your environment, but on some random desktop, RDP suddenly turns on and wasn't turned on before. That's weird, right? That's weird. And it stands out like a sore thumb, right? But again, stop me if you've heard this one. That's event 1, which is also command line auditing. Stop me if you've heard this one before, right? And I turn on RDP, and we can also see there's a simpler alert here. Turn on RDP. If you don't run RDP in the desktops and somebody suddenly turns it on, well, you should know. You should. Now I run guest system again. It works, meaning I'm system. System is the top most powerful account locally on a Windows system, right? And then I load. Well, first I migrate. What's process migration? And this talk I know is about what Metasploit did, but whether I use Sliver or Cobalt Strike, same events. Same. I've done a bunch of Sliver. I've done a bunch of Cobalt Strike. It's the same events. Because what do attackers do? They try to get system. They raise they escalate privileges. They enumerate tokens. They list tokens. But process migration is one many frameworks do. Right now, my Meterpreter, which is Metasploit's agent, is a DLL attached in RAM to plan.exe, which was the name of the polymorphic executable. That's a very tenuous foothold because Defender's watching. If Defender kills plan, my DLL's dead too. So what I did was I migrated from plan.exe, meaning I detached my DLL and plan.exe exited. I could have deleted it then. It would have been fine. I reattached to an innocuous process. I chose WinLogon. WinLogon, just hanging out. No one's going to kill WinLogon. Reattach my DLL there, right? Boom. And then I list the tokens. Oh, domain admin logged in previously. Now, domain admin was not currently logged in. Not logged in. They logged in, patched, left, but they left a token behind, security access token. And the tokens that I want are the ones created by RDP, meaning impersonate, delegate. Impersonate means I become domain admin locally. I'm already system locally, so okay, no big deal. But then delegate means take an action over the network, right? Process migration I got, that's all I got. Nothing else was logged. That's a very silent, the token manipulation and theft, very silent event. Nothing, right? Here's remote thread. Now you'll see remote threads, and I'll show you like a bunch of remote threads. I'll get rid of the where part. So remote threads are created normally. Here's one here. This is normal Windows stuff. Source image, target image, both live in System 32. That's very typical. But notice this one. From a user's home directory to a System 32 binary, service in this case. Not normal. Not normal at all. So in your SIM, and you may be thinking, Eric, I don't use PowerShell to analyze my logs. You probably don't. You probably use Splunk or some SIM, whatever. Just search for these things. Install Sysmon. Get event 8 and many other events. Create remote thread. Ignore threads to and from System 32. Processes. Not perfect. What's left? Userland processes accessing things in System 32. That's weird. That's weird. That's worth looking at, right? And again, nothing on this. So I'm now domain admin locally, right? And I'm almost there. I've achieved my goal of domain admin, but I want permanent domain admin. I still have a tenuous hold. And by the way, when I turned off Defender up here, that switch kept sliding back on over and over. It was like, anti-tampering stuff. It's to tamper detection. It kept sliding the switch on. I'm like, man, just back off. I had to keep a window open with my eye on that switch for when it kept turning off on its own. Defender's good. It's good. I think Rob Bose, I saw he posted on Blue Sky. He's like, one of my clients, he's a pen tester I met. And he's like, when my clients, replace Windows Defender with something else, I thank them because Defender's good, right? And all right, so now became domain admin, ran a shell, created an account for, again, Battlestar Galactica theme, net user number 6, password, I have a plan, because if you watch that show, and they have a plan, right? And then use WMIC to create a domain admin on the domain controller. Create a domain account, and then add that account to domain admin group on the Active Directory controller, all right? And account creation, it stands out. The next event, by the way, is like the number 1 event in Windows event logs. If you're in a SOC, there's the creation of the number 6 account. Here is the addition to the domain admin group. You should watch domain admin group and any other powerful group like a hawk. You should jealously watch that thing. Any change, anything, you should. When I teach 511, and someone's actually done this. When I teach 511, I'm being serious. You should have a fire engine siren in your SOC, like right above the big, the NASA style SOC, the big war room style SOC. Put a fire engine siren, like fully loaded, fully giant piercing alarm sound on it. Domain admin is created. Whoop whoop. I want people to be so shocked by the loudness of that siren they fall out of their chairs and cover their ears in shock. That should be a jarring event for an organization. New domain admin. And then you all rush into the change control system and verify that was an authorized change, right? Target lost 40 million credit cards. That event happened. No one noticed. No one noticed, all right? Then they find the RDP in. Am I actually in? I am. Game over. No more malware. What you call hacking, I call logging in. I'm logging in. I'm logging in. And during the target attack, 40 million credit cards, that happened, right? And finally, the coup de grace, they cleared the logs. Just to erase the handiwork. Now, I got the logs before I cleared them. I had a student tell me, Eric, in the lab, I clear the logs first and then do this stuff later. Like, Eric, that's not very realistic. You should do everything and then clear the logs. I'm like, well, not much of a lab then. Not much of a lab at all. All right, folks, I know that was a whirlwind tour. That's how I like to give these talks. I'll hand it back to our fine hosts. And thank you, Dave, and everyone for having me.
My goodness, that was fantastic, Eric. And I love that. What you might call hacking, I call logging in. But the whole thing from beginning to end. And that's just one lab out of that class. That is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for participating, Eric. There was so much in there. And I think I need to go back and rewatch that and take notes on that thing.